All right, guys. So this month has been really, really good so far. We're, I don't know, 3 weeks, somewhere between 2 and 3 weeks into the month. This is the stack right here, +1 because there is an e-reader. And yeah, some really interesting stuff that I've been reading. So let's talk about it. Okay, folks, so first on the list, Gateway to Freedom by Eric Foner, subtitled The Hidden History of the Underground Railroad. This was really interesting. I think I moved through it a little bit too fast because things flood back to my memory when I think about them. But I feel like when I look at this, I'm just a little hazy on some of the details. You know what I mean? I wish I would have spent a little more time on it. But it was really good, though. What I did read, I certainly got a lot out of it. Even so, and it basically covers the history of the Underground Railroad, obviously, and the abolitionist movement generally, where their main sort of strongholds were, how they adjusted to big events like the passing of the Fugitive Slave Act, which criminalized both the slave, of course, but the anyone who aided and abetted him or her. And so some really heartbreaking tales. It covers a lot of the main personalities that, we expect to hear from in that era. Frederick Douglass, who I just read, actually, the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass a couple of months ago, which absolutely will destroy anybody. If you're looking for a real ugly cry, yeah, you could read that, trust me. I'm talking snot bubbles and all, yeah. Anyway, talks about, Garrison and Smith and many of the main characters, Harriet Beecher Stowe, of course, with Uncle Tom's Cabin, and Harriet Tubman, and many, many others. So lots of publishers, what the media landscape was like at the time, how punitive it was, just not only somebody trying to find their freedom, but for the abolitionists themselves. I mean, because it was so costly, such personal cost, but also financial cost for the abolitionists, most of these slaves had ended up in debts that they just couldn't service, even when they did find their freedom. And the freedom that they won was not like the freedom that we see nowadays. And even that's limited. It's just, hell's a long way down, man. Like, geez, this was hard to read, but it was so valuable. And then next runner-up, Gaza. This was the second book I read this month, An Inquest into Its Martyrdom. This is written by Norman Finkelstein, who is an absolutely outstanding author and scholar and thinker. I'm just blown away by this guy. He even says in the prologue or the introduction that this read requires patience. And yes, it did require patience. I'm going to show you something. Like, you go through these, look at how many endnotes you have on each page. Lots of pages. You have just about the whole real estate there taken up by not footnotes, but the endnotes, because at the back he has a long appendix on the sort of the legality of Israeli, or I should say lack of legality, of the Israeli occupation, and he draws, connections to South Africa and the occupation of Namibia as a very strong precedent against what they're doing. It actually talks about the nuclear ramifications that go along with that, because South Africa was a nuclear power, which was a dimension I had never thought of in terms of the emancipation of Palestinians. So really interesting. And I mean, I could just go on for days about this. It takes patience. It's definitely it works your noodle, but it's so worth it. Then we got the book At War. This was written by Andrew Pettigrew, subtitled How Reading Shaped Conflict and Conflict Shaped Reading. This I enjoyed the most out of Andrew Pettigrew's work. I actually think, because this is such a new release, we haven't really seen how it's performed yet, but I think that this is going to be a bestseller in the nonfiction category. He's A little bit dry. In fact, it's not just him who wrote it. Oh no, sorry, I'm getting it confused with this book. He had a co-author, but this book, it covers basically from the Civil War to the end of the Cold War. So you got well over 100 years of how books shaped conflict and how conflict shaped the way books were written. I think why I like this so much is because you could go so many places with it philosophically, speaking about free speech and just the lack of absolution in that regard. That, we tend to idealize free speech as this, sort of wonderful right, which it is, but people think that, short of some really, really extreme grievances, you should be able to say just about whatever the hell you want. And actually, that's not the case at all. And this shows how, censorship, I'm not an apologist for fascism, but censorship, the only way freedom of speech works and the way we understand it and value it can only be appreciated against the backdrop of a certain level of censorship. So that was a really interesting book. And again, there's if I really have to parse out what I'm going to say about these things, because I feel like I'm not saying enough. I'm selling it short. This, I didn't realize at the time when I took this out from the library, that it was written by the same author, Andrew Pettigrew. It was co-authored with Arthur der Veduwen. I don't know if the German pronunciation is called for there, but anyway, and I've had my eyes on this book for a long time. I mean, just the covers are beautiful. Yes, we do judge books by covers, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. But I wanted to get into this a few years ago. It came out in 2021, but I finally got around to it, and I didn't even realize it was written by the same author. So that was funny to have a bookend there with the same guy. This was a great book, Africa Town, America's Last Slave Ship and the Community It Created, by Nick Tabor. This guy is actually just a freelance journalist. And did he ever do a good job, man? This is incredible. If you go on Netflix, there's a documentary called Descendant. I'd highly recommend it. It basically follows the exact same, well, it's not fiction, so I can't really say plot, but it follows the same high points and low points, as the case may be, of the story of the last slave ship that hit American shores, called the Clotilda, which was just discovered, I think, in 2019 or 2020. And yeah, just a real devastating book. By the way, talks a lot about a guy named Cudgel Lewis, biographed by, can't remember the journalist at the time, but she wrote this book called Barracoon. And that book, just like the narrative of Frederick Douglass, will destroy you in, snot bubbles and everything. It's just really, really heartbreaking. Okay, now, as I promised, I'm going to be doing a lot more stuff on the main track. The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Everyone's been talking about this since it came out. I think it came out in 2017. What can I say? It is worth its plaudits. I think I rated it around 4 stars. Covers themes of celebrity and fame, the cost of fame. I don't want to give any spoilers, but the LGBTQ themes figure quite prominently in here. I'm not going to tell you which one, because I don't want to, if it's lesbian, gay, bi, trans, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but the storytelling is second to none, really. It's worth the 2 million copies that it sold, or says it sold. Probably a lot more by now. Okay, and then moving on to this. I didn't even know who Jeanette McCurdy was. I'm glad my mom died, and as the title shows, there's a real sort of dark humor that I found really appealing about this, and you kind of trauma bond with this poor girl, this child star. And even though I didn't know who she was, or even iCarly, which is what she starred in, along with Sam and Cat, I think was the name of the show. I don't even know the name of the show. That's how out of touch I am. But yeah, Nickelodeon star. She had been through so much that, you know, for somebody who's 31 and, you know, was put through so much abuse, you know, by a mother that really should have known better. I mean, we're not talking, this wasn't 70 years ago or 100 years ago. I mean, we're talking about, you know, her struggles with anorexia and bulimia and how her mom foisted that on her. And it's like, in this day and age, you know, like there are still mothers that are, you know, manipulating people into that, you know. So that was a really good book too. This has been out for a little while. I think it was 2021. Let me see here, by Adam Grant, and it was really good too. It was, I think I put it at about 3 or 4 stars. I probably rounded up to 4 stars. Yeah, this was written in 2021, and it is good. Like the information is pretty unimpeachable. I mean, it's, you know, well sourced, and the guy is definitely a professional in his field. You know, he's been cited a lot in many works that I've seen, so I wouldn't take away from that. It came off to me a little bit pop psychology, not culty, mind you, like Jordan Peterson, but definitely pop psych, and you know, good information, but a little bit kind of patronizing, I guess. If you had the same sort of vibe, if you read this and you kind of felt the same thing, let me know in the comments if I'm onto something, if it was just me. I still thought it was really good, but The Bookseller of Florence by Ross King. This was written, I think, in 2021 as well, or else 2019. No, 2021. So it came out the same year as The Library by Andrew Pettigrew, and very, very similar. This focuses mainly on the manuscripts and the main bookseller of the time in Florence. You know, so it covers the Renaissance period, covers from the Renaissance until the modern day, in fact, touches on, you know, lots of things in between, but mainly focuses on the Renaissance. And the main guy that we're talking about in this book is Vespasiano, who was a copyist. He made most of the manuscripts of the time, and, you know, was responsible for the popularization of, you know, Plato and Aristotle and Socrates, and sort of the transitions, the evolution, I should say, of the Catholic Church with that sort of thought influence. You know, some of the politics that fell out of it, because, you know, lots of this would have been quite heretical to the foundational doctrines of the Catholic Church. It was a bit dry. I was definitely out of my depth because I don't know a whole lot about the Renaissance. But, I mean, what do they say? If you don't read anything over your head, then you condemn your mind to the same low altitude that it's been flying until now. And I really believe that. So it was a value for me to read this, even though I felt like I didn't recognize any of the names, and I had a hard time remembering all of these people that he kept talking about, even though he introduced them earlier in the book. Then there was another book. I'll have a picture here. It's called, just trying to remember it here. See, I can't see the image right now. It's called Except for Palestine. I've got a real soft spot for Palestine. Been reading lots on it these days. Have always read quite a bit throughout my adult life on that topic. Because it's such a horrible injustice, and I want to shed as much light as I possibly can on what's going on over there. And I can't remember the author. You'll just have to read off the image there, because it escapes my mind at the moment. But he does a really good job, quite scholarly, very accessible, which was good. The Gaza book by Norman Finkelstein was not nearly as accessible. I was right at home with the Gaza book because I've done a lot of reading. But if you're just getting fresh on onto understanding the Israel-Palestine conflict, this would probably be a great place to start, a little bit of a primer. Yeah, and he handles it actually as well as you possibly can handle it while taking a very strong position, which, as any human being, if you have any sort of compassion, I don't see how you couldn't take any other position but the Palestinian side. That said, it's not to say that there aren't certain pre-qualifications that one needs to make in charity to Israelis and the history of the Jews and the religions involved and so on. Like, that obviously has to be a part of the conversation, but the standard sort of justifications that Israel puts forward for the brutalization, the worse than animalistic brutalization of these poor people is simply not justifiable. And for you to make any defense of what Israel has done, you really are in fascist territory. Like, there's just no other way around it. I'm sorry. I think if you'll defend what Israel is doing to Gaza right this very moment, you'll defend just about anything. And you can say that while still having the nuance to appreciate that, yes, we need to have coexistence in this land. We need to have coexistence in the Levant. But there's a way of doing that, and there is a broad consensus of the pre-1967 lines and various things that have to be initiated by Israel, which Israel refuses to do. So, anyway, that's how many books so far we got. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 books so far, and the month isn't even over. So let me know in the comments if you have anything to say so far on these. If you've read anything, if you want me to say anything about these books that you've either read or are intending to read in future reviews of them. I'll see you in the comments. Thanks for stopping by, guys.
Hey everyone, I hope you liked this video. If you want more like the one you just watched, click the suggested video on this screen. Make sure you subscribe, and to connect with me on my other platforms, my handles are linked below in the description, alright? Take care, peeps. Till next time.